Welcome to the wild, wild west of adulting, a virtual road trip between two entrepreneurs and BFFs who are navigating the uncertainty and possibility of pursuing life off the beaten path. And today's episode is all about how to get ready to go back to school, okay? So we're talking about what do you need to unlearn and what do you need to learn in 2020. So recently, Christina, I had such a great chat. So we have these family sort of video conference calls once a week. It's like everybody's sort of starved for human interaction. So we're all I've never been more fascinating to my nephews and my niece. Okay. So anyway, so one of my nephews is in middle school and he was talking about, going back to school. Was he ready for it? Was he not ready for it? And it was just such a fascinating conversation because he was saying, on the one hand, he's super excited to potentially go back to school because he misses his friends. So he misses the social interaction, getting to hang out with them, learning together, just the stimulus of being in an engaging and an immersive environment. And on the other hand, he's like, well, we're all kids, so we can't be trusted to always wear our mask effectively. And he's sort of very aware of the coronavirus.
Yeah, I was going to say, you really got to appreciate that self-awareness.
Very aware. He knows exactly what's going on. But the thing that really got me is that he said, he's concerned about the long-term implications of, mental health issues on kids that are not able to connect in ways that they would traditionally have been able to do. And so he was very concerned, like just the way he was articulating that. I was just like, wow, our future is in good hands because, you're talking about all of the implications. And it got me thinking about as grown-ups, right? I mean, we all, when you're a kid, you're just like, I can't wait to be a grown-up. It's like, you still have to sort of make these decisions, do I send my kids to school? Do I not send my school? How do I sort of work and navigate this new environment, right? And so there's a lot of pressure on all of us, I think, to be navigating our social relationships in new ways because we just don't know, how long this is going to go on for. So I don't know,
Well, I've been seeing different memes that like say, if you're sending your kids back to school, you're a good parent. If you are keeping your children home and homeschooling, you're a good parent. If you're doing the hybrid model, you're a good parent. Because it's like, I think part of people's anxiety around this is, am I doing the right thing for my kid? If I pick the wrong, because to your nephew's point about mental health, right? So generally speaking, we know that children are not the ones who are suffering from this particular disease. I actually watched a video that Matthew McConaughey did with Dr. Fauci, and he was saying that there's a couple theories behind why kids might not be getting it. He was saying that because it's like this coronavirus is one of many types of different coronaviruses that are similar to the ones from the regular flu. And that because kids always get so sick that there might be something like remnant antibodies that kind of give them a little added protection. But for whatever reason, this idea though, is that the reason why we still want to be careful with schools is because they can be asymptomatic. They can bring things home to their parents, their grandparents, siblings with compromised immune systems, like all these different things. And so, we obviously understand the reason to maybe not send kids to school, but there is a flip side to that because that's protecting them for the physical health, but there is a mental health challenge. And it's like kind of weighing the option. Like I know my niece, my sister-in-law is like, I know she needs to go back. Like, I kind of don't want to send her back for like the physical health scare reasons, but I saw how she was for the second semester, not having the social interaction, but also her ability to learn and understand things from just a screen was just not what it needed to be in terms of like optimizing her education. So I think there are no simple answers. I think, that people are doing the best that they can. And it's really just figuring out ways that you can be creative. Now, for myself, my son is registered to start kindergarten, and his school is going virtual from September through the end of October. Now, there's a part of me that is like, okay, yes, he'll be safe. There's another part of me that's like, so now for 2 months, I have to figure out how to get him to learn while I'm still trying to work and do what I need to do. And especially because what you and I do is a little bit unconventional. And so that can have its pros and cons. But I'm thinking, like, could I start a little co-op with some other mommy friends and, you know, sacrifice one day a week where I'm being the teacher for all, you know, 5 kids, and then the next day somebody else is, and the next day somebody else. So it's kind of like, that's a way that we could kind of innovate and do it a little differently, but still address all the things that we need to address. But I just think that back to school time is getting us to think about how we maybe reapproach old things in new ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've talked with, you know, my sisters, and this idea of a pod, you know, kept coming up, which is that you have this pod of kids who are close in age that can socialize, and maybe your families kind of connect together. I've talked to other friends about this as well. And, you know, an interesting model. You know, I've always worked from home. I mean, it's like, so when folks were sort of getting adjusted to the new working remotely thing, I was like, well, this is normal. But it meant that, you know, things like, you know, whether it's going to church, going to the gym or whatever, they're no longer accessible. So how do you sort of intentionally create those spaces for connection? And I think that, you know, you almost have to try harder than it was getting, because when you're in school, I mean, you and I met in 2nd grade, okay? There was not much escaping it. My last name started with
I was just gonna say, when your last name's Essien and my last name's Marinacci, and the teachers, they don't get creative at the beginning of the year. They just put everybody in alphabetical order. I mean, we were destined to be BFFs.
There's no creativity whatsoever. I actually still remember getting kicked out of, I think it was Mr. Carmelo's math class, I think it was calculus or something, for passing notes because I had no business being in that class at all. And I was so disruptive. They were like, please go anywhere but here, you know? So I think when you're in school, it's just sort of natural. Like, making friends is very organic and natural. And I feel like after you get past the age of maybe 30, then it starts becoming like really challenging. So I just remember moving to a new city, knowing no one really. You know, I had a friend who was here and then sort of moved abroad. And so I would go to these networking events and I'd be like, will you be my friend?
Meanwhile, I'm the opposite. I feel like I'm in different groups, whether it's mommy groups, church groups, networking groups. And I like dip my toe in enough with people to do whatever we're called to do in that moment. But anything outside of that, I'm like, ooh, I actually have enough friends in my life right now, because
basically,
I'm like, I'd rather be talking to you via Zoom than like trying to, I don't know. It's something I need to work on in the opposite direction.
So basically, Christina's a love them and leave them type, okay? She's like, I'll bring your baked goods. I'll do whatever fundraiser we're doing. I'm out at the end.
And then I'm out.
Meanwhile, I'm like, does anyone want to have deep talks about life and the meaning of life? It's like, no, we're just here for a presentation. Okay, good. You know? So it takes a heightened level of intention when you're trying to create friends after a certain age. And then also, I think just the nature of this digital world we're in right now, it's like people have to actually, you know, really, like, I've been probably more active on social media than I would if we were sort of free and outside was open, right? So I think that you have to sort of be purposeful with it, right? Like, it's like following up and sort of really making it, you know, a commitment really to sort of get.
Well, actually, so another girlfriend of mine, even though I belong to a gym that we are still able to do some outside stuff, I have some friends that don't belong to a gym. So we've been doing a weekly, the personal trainer comes to her house and we do a sweat session together. So it's a way of sort of getting some social activity in, but it also has a health and wellness benefit too, because we're doing the workout. This week we built in smoothie bowls right after. So we do our workout, we made our smoothie bowls. I mean, I feel amazing right now. I got my endorphins up, I got my sweat session in, I nourished my body with, you know, good clean eating. And I have to say, like, it sort of brings, it gives, you know, outside of this pandemic, I don't know that I would have bothered to try to integrate that into my life right now. But it's been really nice, and I've expanded my circle a little bit as well, because, you know, it's at her house, so she's inviting her friends that are in a different, you know, circle than I am. So, you know, there are ways to really, like you said, sort of build in new ways of doing things that integrate the things you already would have been doing, but being more intentional about it.
So true. And I think it's so funny because I feel like I've made more friends not leaving my house than I did when I was running all around town, right? So it's like, because I actually am like craving the interaction. But so I think one of the things we need to sort of talk about is we're talking about this idea of back to school, or for us, whatever back to your quote unquote routine is. And there's some of that baggage we need to leave behind, right? That it's not going in our backpack as we're sort of trudging ahead for the road that is to come. And so I'm curious sort of what process you've been going through in terms of unlearning. So what are some of the ideas or ideals that you've had to sort of let go of for you to sort of emerge as the woman that you're sort of becoming?
I think I've really had to unlearn this idea of not pursuing something until it's exactly the right time, or not doing something unless I can do it perfectly. I mean, I feel like, you know, when in an interview they'll be like, what is one of your greatest weaknesses? Like, I was always that person that was like, it's my perfectionism. It's like it's like the freaking pageant answer. But it does ring true for me. Like, I mean, you know how I can be with symmetry. I have this idea of like what things need to be. And I think in the past, I would not move forward on something unless I felt like I can do it 110% and I can do it, you know, I can execute with as much precision as possible. And it's really coming, like, I've really had to unlearn that and say, you know what? Anybody who becomes a master of anything, an instrument, a sport, a profession, they do not master it by being perfect. They master it by making mistakes along the way and learning from them and evolving and growing. I mean, it's like even working out, like when you build muscles, because you're tearing the muscle, it repairs itself, and that's what gets it bigger and stronger. So to me, I feel like that has been a huge unlearning lesson, and one I have to constantly revisit, because it's easy to default back into that mode.
So good, Christina. So good.
What about you and Yeti? What do you need to unlearn?
Well, you know, I've had to let go. So, you know, in high school, I was voted most likely to succeed. Okay. So that was my sort of claim to fame. And so I just was on this path of like chasing success. And I think the flip side of that, so the ugly rear end of that, is that you are so failure averse, right? Like that you do not want to even entertain the idea that there's potential for failure. So it's like, I'm going to play this game. If I can win this game, I want to play it. If there's no chance of winning it, you know, who can be bothered? And so I feel like giving myself permission to like fall on my face has just quite honestly been the most refreshing thing I probably could have done for a type A personality that is used to sort of being so hard charging, is to give myself permission to fall and then know that I can pick myself back up again. You know, I think that if you don't allow for failure, it means that you don't trust yourself for, you know, being able to rebuild it. And it's just like that process you described of the process of building muscle, that there's sort of this breaking down of the old way of doing things, a breaking down of the old sort of way of navigating the world so that a new way can emerge. I mean, that was so powerful to me to say it's okay to fail. If anything, I want to fail quickly, and like each process is an iterative learning and an iterative.
I was just gonna say that's basically what I've learned entrepreneurship is just like you constantly do something, iterate, do something, iterate, like reiterate. It's how anything that becomes huge and successful, that's the only way that you can do it. So, I mean, I think we're onto something.
Huge, so huge. I mean, I think you have to, I think the experience of having an epic failure for me, that was like being laid off and like not having a job. That idea to me, and some might see it as a gift because it created room for new dreams. That really gave me permission to be an entrepreneur, right? Because an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, you're constantly doing things, that you've never done before. And so you're really having to give yourself permission to fail, but also having that boundless optimism that the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And so you still are fueled by this desire to see what's on the other end of that, right? That's the exciting part, because if you never risk, there's no reward, right?
Yeah, I think, and a lot of our conversations, because we're on this entrepreneurial journey, can be around business or career, but this applies to other aspects and other facets of our life. I can think of like one of what I would say was a huge loss for me, or what felt like a very personal failure, was um, the destruction of my first marriage. Like that happened to me at the pinnacle of my professional success. Everything in my life was like, I was at the top of my game. I was buying my first apartment in Brooklyn, and I mean, it's a huge part, but it's like the one thing I couldn't fix, this relationship. And so, but there was so much rich learning in not only the unraveling of the relationship itself, but the building up of myself, because that was very soul crushing. And it really, the same way that careers can be so infused into our identity, our relationships can often be so infused into our identity. So when you have that breakup, it's not just the loss of the person, it's the loss of who you consider yourself to be as a result of being in that relationship. So, but that journey of building myself back up, and then, starting a new relationship, eventually getting married again, there are so many lessons that I take from that first marriage that I come into my current and existing marriage with, hopefully the last, and say, okay, this is not about me expecting this other person to be XYZ or to do ABC. This is about me being able to control my responses, my expectations. And so I think a lot of this unlearning has to be done in everything. Even, I could go on, the things about being a mother, but you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. I mean, it's gold. I mean, it's you said that the identity piece, right? So when you're unlearning your actual identity, then it's like, well, who the heck am I? I mean, I thought I wanted this relationship, job, this house, whatever the thing is for you, right? That you thought you had bought into, right? Now it's giving yourself the permission to say, well, it's okay to not want, what I thought was the idea of who I am. And it's okay to create again, right? So I think a lot of times we feel like there's this sunk cost, right? I've already invested in this life. I've already invested in this relationship. I mean, I've made that mistake several times.
That's why I was in the first one for so long, because I was like, I got to double down now. I put too much into this.
Yeah. So I think that, we learn about who we are through the process of going on the journey, and it's okay to really innovate around that and start to create a new sense of self. I think that's huge. So we want to hear from all of you. I mean, we've been on this road trip now, having a lot of sort of road stories, from the path, and in many cases, what feels like the wilderness, right? So we want to hear from you. What is one thing that you want to unlearn in 2020? What is one thing that you are going to unlearn in 2020? Drop a note in the comments. Let us know. Strike up a conversation. You never know. Maybe someone else is also trying to unlearn that same thing.
And we can all unlearn together.
Yes, yes. We'll all be in unschooling together.
Yes, unschooling together.
Unschooling Academy, okay? So thank you again for joining the Wild Wild West of Adulting. We are so thrilled that you were able to come along with us for the ride. We look forward to hearing from you. So tell us.
Don't forget to like, subscribe.
Yes, like and subscribe, share with a friend you think they benefit from the conversation. And we look forward to talking with you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.